So with time moving on, I'd like to bring in a couple of our panelists. We've got Harry Ng and Michael Zimmel. Harry, just briefly to introduce Harry, Harry's got great experience, particularly in the retail sector with B&Q and Office Depot. Harry, how do you sort of your thoughts and experiences about the budgeting forecasting process at the places you've worked, and where the difficulty came from, and whether this type of modelling would have been a big improvement?
Well, thank you, David. I think the most difficult part in forecasting and budgeting is, of course, is lack of good tools to do the consolidations of all the numbers coming from all the different business partners. And I think, as Eric said, most of us are using Excel to do the business modeling. And I think the other challengings, besides getting all the data, I think the partnerships with the operational team are very, very critical to get the insight from the operational teams, and then come up with the right forecast and budget. The other thing is, whenever we do the bottom-up forecasting and budget, we always get the challenges from the senior managements from corporate. And if we want to change something, and without a good tools to do all this kind of changes, it's a nightmare to do all the changes, and then get the buy-in from the team.
Yeah, great. If I could throw a similar question over to Michael, how do you feel about your experiences when being a CFO and now on the other side of the fence being a business owner? Where do the difficulties lie in this, and what would be good?
Yeah, I think Eric mentioned something really important, which is the connection to all the other data you have throughout the company. So often in companies, when you do financial planning, you tend to neglect all the data that you actually have. You look mostly at financial data or KPIs, drivers that you have calculated yourself. I particularly like the slide that Eric showed, all the data connections that you can do. And when he mentioned your salespeople have done a forecast in Salesforce, or the immense data that you have in Outlook that no one looks at, these really should be data that you should be using in doing your forecast and and also in your budgeting, because that is then when we really talk about business intelligence, meaning collecting all the available data and making as much use of it as possible, and not looking at the FP&A exercise separate from the rest of the business. And for that, really, you need more advanced tools than Excel. I use Excel all the time on a daily basis. It's a love-hate relationship. It does a lot. It has all the flexibility, but the lack of central calculations and a central database can be a real pain in larger organizations. But the real benefit, I think, really comes from when you are able to use all the other data that you have. And most people don't realize how much usable data they have that they can use in their forecasting.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that, Michael.
And Harry, back in your experience, was it most of the tools you were using, was it just Excel, or did you have anything more sophisticated than that? And what kind of team had to handle the Excel consolidation side? Were there dedicated resources for that?
Well, yeah, mainly is using Excel, and I think the finance team in each of the local business in the regions will do the data collections via Excel, and then the regional team in Asia will do the consolidations of all the Excel spreadsheets. And then we would use the Hyperion to do the submission to the corporate. But when we do this, it's actually we will lose lots of details in our bottom-up working when we're submitting the data to the corporate, and that will impact our analysis subsequently to see how and what the reasons why we can or cannot achieve the target as we set in at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I think that's.
Sorry, carry on, Michael.
Sorry, David. That is a very good point, Harry. I often feel that you have a financial plan and it feels disconnected from the business, because the business, some people, they do their own modeling on a micro basis, but this kind of get lost in your overall financial reporting. For that, you need to connect these two somehow. Obviously, if you look at a group forecast, you cannot drill down to every single detail. But how you keep that connection is that you assure that you have clear data definitions across the company. So when you talk about a certain driver or KPI that you use in your budgeting and in your forecast, you have to make sure that that is the same definition that is used down to the very smallest unit of your business. Because then when you want to track back and you speak to these people, you're speaking the same language. And then you can do a more detailed analysis on each business unit or functional level. And you know that this analysis or any actions that you take will eventually have a direct impact on your financial forecasts. I mean, it allows you to take these actions. It also gives you high acceptance of your forecast and your budget. It will increase the accuracy, because if you forecast the same way as your sales, as your marketing, as your operational people forecast, you know that you will be closer to reality of what your business reflects. And it will also increase the effectiveness of real-time reporting, because you can draw on the same data to do ad hoc reports for analysis that people may need for short-term decision making, and you will be sure that this decision making is linked to the overall forecast that you have in your mind, even though that may not show all the details in the first sight.
In fact, yes, I was going to make a similar point in that Hyperion can do a lot of this stuff, but unfortunately the way often that the companies implement tools like Hyperion is head office, which doesn't understand the local business at all, decide the reporting template, and they lock it all down in a way that you can only put data into Hyperion in that structure. They don't actually allow the local businesses to build out a model that can cater for this Excel spaghetti, which would actually be really, really helpful at local level, because simply head office don't understand it and they can't cope with that kind of modeling. So it sort of becomes, you're dumbing down a tool which could actually help you quite a lot.
The other side of it, David, just to extend that further, so tools like Hyperion and traditional tools that we've all sort of cut our teeth with over the years, they lessen that detail as you come up by necessity, because you're sitting on top of a pyramid. So the amount of data that keeps coming up to each level, they have to reduce it by necessity. The thing is, there are tools available now where that's not such a requirement anymore. So if you want to be able to model at deeper levels and still have that detail available, you can actually do that a lot more. But there's like this conventional wisdom, so to speak, that's out there where for me to have an implementation, it looks a certain way because that's what we've always done. And that's something that, go out there and have a bit of a look around, because there's definitely some tools out there now that you could play that a bit differently.
David, let me ask a question here, because I was wondering around that before when Eric was presenting it, and let's see who is picking up this question. And then we have these tools, and we talked a lot about the tools, and I think the people at least who know me or have been in a call 2 weeks ago know that I tried to put a little bit of different angle to that question. Eric mentioned before that this teamwork is really essential, and from my background and experience, I can only support and underline and highlight this. The question a little bit I want to bounce back and to any of the panelists is, who should be in that team when we talk about team collaboration, that team spirit? Who should be in that team to design and maintain that business model? Yeah.
Go ahead, David. You're right.
Well, I was going to say, Rick, I guess, the CFO should really, at the start of the process, be sitting down with the senior managers in the business and working out who the key stakeholders are. Some departments like marketing and some of the product teams might be really, really important because they've got specialist knowledge around the drivers of the business. Maybe your IT head doesn't have that and is not such a necessary person. But I think the CFO should be the best person to be able to work out who the key collaborators should be.
Yeah, I think a CFO generally has the standing within the business as well. I mean, there should be their task to make sure that all the data used is objective and is not influenced by any specific agenda, and really have in mind that it should be useful to the overall top management of the company and on every single level of the company. So I think the lead should be from the CFO, and then depending on in which area you go to, you have to create your teams for certain areas of the business.
Well, for my experience, I think the CEO is also important to get involved and partner with the CFO, as well as the local business owners, which means maybe the country managers, the key drivers, to make sure that the collaborations and the partnerships are there. This is very, very important because most of the time, the operational team will think, oh, this is only finance exercise. It's none of my business. And without the senior team support and driving the whole process, it will be very, very difficult for the CFO alone and the finance team to drive the good budgeting process.